Yeah, I saw all that.
You've been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
Continuing our mission to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. It's the Get Ready for the Future show. Welcome in. I'm John Shrewsbury, in for Scott Inman, who is off, catching some sun somewhere, Janet.
Yeah. And somehow when he's away, they let us both sit at the mics together at the same time, just like the good old days.
19 years ago, we were doing this scared to death on live radio and didn't have a clue what we were trying to do, but somehow made it through. And now 19 years later, we get to do it again. Founders Week at the Get Ready for the Future show at GenWealth. Right. We've got lots of questions going on. And Janet, I was thinking about the fact that we've been doing this a while, and I don't know that in the 19 years that we have been airing the Get Ready for the Future show, I don't know that I've ever quite seen a time when there has been so much noise out there in the financial world. Everybody has an attitude and everybody has an opinion about everything, especially when it comes to money, and most of the opinions kind of stink.
Well, and one of the things that we've also discovered is that now all financial things seem to also be politicized.
Yep.
And there's just almost not a place where you can dial down the noise unless you turn off all electronic sources of information. You just can't dial it down right now. So it is an ever-present just in your ears all the time. And how do you just get past the noise and get to what do I need to understand and what is truth?
Yeah.
And what is true for you in terms of what you need is different than what your neighbor needs. So being able to filter through everything. And John, that's part of what our purpose is here today on the show. We've got some questions that we're going to walk through and help these people filter through. And hopefully for some of the rest of the listeners out there, there's something that you can identify with and gather some truth.
Back 19 years ago, we started the show talking about straight talk with retirement investments and your money. We don't necessarily use that phrase a lot anymore, but that's the essence of what we're doing here. And we're taking your questions. We've got your questions teed up and ready to go. Our first question today comes from Marion in Little Rock. And Marion, by the way, is a female. Marion says, we just sold our business and netted about $1.4 million. We're in our early 60s. Wow, congratulations. That is fantastic. The question is, how do we turn that into sustainable retirement income without blowing it? We just sold our business. Janet, that's a sweet sound. Now, we're not selling GenWealth, but for most business owners, that is a sweet sound when you net $1.4 million. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event.
Yeah, so the hard part, and Marion has alluded to this, the hard part is how do you take that windfall and turn it into lifetime income? And I'm going to start with a question for you. I don't want to make the assumption that when you say you netted 1.4, that is an after tax. It might be net of other things. It might be that it's net of some debt that the business had, or there's a whole lot of things that could be referencing. We really need to understand, what do you have net after taxes this first year? So I'm sure you've already done this, but just in case you haven't, be absolutely certain that you spend some significant time with your CPA and that they have all of the information that they're going to need, because there are some tremendous joys and opportunities that come from selling a business. But in that first year, when you do it, the big thing that everybody has to get past is how much you're going to owe in taxes. And it is usually a significant amount for that first year. And then beyond that, we can kind of settle into some planning for your predictable income after we know how much we need to set aside for taxes, John.
Now, Marion, in case you haven't tackled this tax issue, one thing you do need to understand is that you have what's called a basis in your business. That's how much money you have put into that business. If you bought the business from someone, that's the beginning of your basis. And then as you invested other dollars into the business, you're able to increase that basis. The basis is important because the difference between your cost basis and the sale price of your business is the capital gain that you would be taxed on. And the good news is that capital gain tax rates generally are lower than ordinary income tax rates. So we would recommend you have a qualified CPA, take a look at everything. You probably already have had a CPA on board with the things that you've been doing. If not, then you probably ought to run to the CPA's office and be sure that they get caught up on what's been going on. But the taxes are a big deal. But the key question, Janet, is about that retirement income.
So, Marion, I think you were very wise to focus on, even in your question, you said sustainable retirement income. And that is exactly what you're going to need throughout your retirement to be able to purchase two things, your dignity and your independence. So it begins with asking yourself the question, what is your required income? We'll talk about desired income later on, but what amount of money per month do you have to have for food, shelter, clothing, and transportation? Get those basics covered. Most people are going to have some guaranteed income sources coming in. So, Marion, if you and your husband have Social Security, it's important to put together a Social Security claiming strategy. I would encourage you to not look at this as his benefit and her benefit. There are lots of ways to pool those together with a claiming strategy that can make a big difference for you. So, Social Security is probable for you. It is likely that you don't have a pension since you've been a business owner, but I don't want to set that aside and not mention it because there may have been something earlier on, or your husband may have a pension in place. So anyway, beyond that, we really want to think through, John, like how are we solving for your required income? So let's talk a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, I think that this is where some of that financial noise can come into play here, Janet, because when you think about Social Security and you think about a pension, what those essentially are annuitized income, meaning it is income for the rest of your life. And we equate the need for guaranteed income to a source of guaranteed income flow. So we regularly recommend that if people don't have enough in Social Security and pension to make up their guaranteed income level, then they might want to think about part of their assets going into some type of annuity product. And this is where all the noise begins because people have all kinds of opinions about annuities. Let me just state very unequivocally, annuities are neither good nor bad. They are a tool, just like a hammer is a tool. If you use a hammer to try to drive a screw into the wall, that's a problem. You're misusing that tool. Annuities can be misused and they can get a bad rap when that happens, but there is no product, no financial investment on the planet that can transfer the risk of running out of money before you run out of time to a well-capitalized insurance company except for an annuity.
So there's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of how you could use them, and we don't believe that everybody needs one. That's a key difference. I think it becomes problematic when, going back to your toolbox scenario, when a financial advisor, it doesn't matter who walks in the door or what the need is, they're like, here's the product and you need this. That's not how we utilize annuities in our planning. If when you come in, Marion, and you say, I've got to have X amount of money per month, and on a guaranteed basis, I have to have that every single month, then if your Social Security and if there's a pension in place, if the combination of those two guaranteed sources of income will meet your required income need, then you don't need an annuity. Hands down, that's it, period, move on. But if your Social Security and pension do not total the amount that you're going to need for your required income, then you have a gap. And as John mentioned, the annuity is the only way to fill that. Beyond that, after we've solved for your required income, we're going to work forward and look at desired income. But John, let's talk about the compliance requirement on annuity disclosures before we go into desired income.
Yeah, you just have to understand that annuities carry with them fees and surrender charges and things of that nature. Most of those things sound scary, but they're really not if they're, again, utilized properly, and that you have to be sure that you understand the details of an annuity contract, because they are complex products,
right?
And you have to qualify to be able to have one. Now, on this desired income thing, Janet, let's talk about that, because no one wants to just go through retirement simply just taking care of their basic needs. You want to go have some fun. You want to have some discretionary income. You want to be able to adjust your income for inflation going forward. And so that's where we utilize a bucketing strategy, where it's a time segmentation strategy. And what we're doing with this is we're actually trying to negate the three big risks of retirement. Those risks are sequence of return risk, or what we call timing risk, what the market is going to do in the near-term future as you get ready to retire. The inflation risk that we've already mentioned, and then the longevity risk. If you live a long time, the effect on your money is much like the effect of taking a rubber band and stretching it and stretching it and stretching it until it pops. And so you've got to be sure that you somehow deal with the longevity risk of the possibility of you outliving your money. That is a part and parcel to the GenWealth Ready to Retire process that all of our retirees go through here at GenWealth.
So overall, Marion, to just recap, be sure that you're having that conversation with your tax professional about what your obligations are after having sold the business, and set aside that money for those taxes. And then beyond that, we can help you solve for your required and desired income. And we've talked about the philosophy, but then there are products that you would need to utilize to implement that type of plan. And if you need our services, we'd be happy to help you walk through that process.
Janet, Marion sold a business. That's the dream of every business owner. If you are a business owner, we want to call your attention to some special event that we've got coming up on October 4th here in Little Rock. It is at the Delta Hotel in Little Rock. It is the Built to Endure Business Owners Summit. It's going to be Saturday, 9 to noon at the Delta Hotel. We planned this on Saturday very intentionally because most business owners are working 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and maybe even bigger, more hours than that. But Saturday usually is a time of flexibility for a lot of business owners. So you can actually plug into this Business Owners Summit. We've got great speakers, including Houston Nutt, the former Razorback football coach. You may think, what does Houston Nutt know about business? Well, he knows about running a team.
That's right.
And he knows about motivating a team. And he knows about execution of strategy. And those are things that we're going to bring to you at the Business Owners Summit. It's coming up October the 4th. You can sign up at getreadyforthefuture.com/endure. That's ENDURE/endure. Go sign up at getreadyforthefuture.com today.
And by the way, that's an off day for the Razorbacks.
It is. It absolutely is. All right, let's go to our next question. It comes from James via text message. We are 58 and have never had life insurance. Is it still worth looking at, or have we missed the boat? Janet, life insurance is another one of those noise things that people have opinions about. Again, life insurance is neither good nor bad. It is a tool. There are good products and there are not so good products in life insurance, but each one of them is a tool and they have a particular use.
Well, and I think it's important to understand really where you are, James, in your phase of life, and whether or not you even still need to have insurance in place. So we want to think about, as far as life insurance, which is what you were really asking about, with life insurance, the primary question is there somebody who is dependent upon your income? We believe that for most people, if something happens to them while they're married and they're raising minor children, then obviously the spouse and the surviving children need to have a certain amount of money to be able to maintain their standard of living. As you age, those kids hopefully are grown and flown, and now you have a spouse. Do you have the assets where the spouse would be able to, without life insurance, to be able to maintain the spouse's standard of living? If your answer is yes on that the assets are in place to be able to replace your working income, then you may not need life insurance strictly for the purpose of life insurance anymore. If the answer is no, then we need to solve for replacement of income. Beyond that, you want to think about things like any legacy that you might want to leave to your heirs, and obviously being able to take control or to handle the final expenses for burial and things like that. But the thing that I start thinking about in your late 50s is not so much life insurance as a different type of insurance, John.
Yeah, life insurance can be a hybrid product. There are forms of life insurance that can be a hybrid product that facilitate long-term care. And when I say long-term care, I think most people immediately think nursing home. This type of insurance actually keeps you out of the nursing home. It provides you liquidity that you can actually bring people into your home and provide home health care and things of that nature. So I think that if you look at life insurance as a particular tool that would facilitate whatever you need at the time that you need it, I think that makes some sense. There's one other thing, Janet, that has become more in vogue since the passage of the Secure Act a few years ago in terms of retirement planning. You know, it used to be you could leave an IRA to a non-spouse beneficiary. And that non-spouse beneficiary, meaning a child or a grandchild or some other relative, sister, brother, whatever, they could actually stretch the payments on that non-spouse beneficiary IRA over the course of their lifetime. And so the tax impact of that was really dispersed over their lifetime as opposed to what it is now, which they have to take those distributions from that IRA within a 10-year period of time. Well, a philosophy could be that you could utilize life insurance to provide for the bequest to your heir. Life insurance is the only financial product that I'm aware of that there is zero tax at your passing. That money just goes to your heirs unless you get a step up in cost basis on an asset, and that's still in place, by the way. But life insurance provides a tax-free death benefit, and you could spend the IRA money yourself and leave the asset of life insurance and avoid taxation to your non-spouse beneficiary. So that is an area where I think life insurance could come into play. Obviously, with James's question, 58 years old, there's always the question of underwriting and being able to be approved for life insurance, because at 58 things start to fall apart.
And I would say, if you're going to go this direction, that it's important at this point to make an intentional decision. This is the conversation that I always have with people when they're considering long-term care coverage, that I'm not going to ask you to commit to getting it or not getting it at this point. I am going to ask you to commit to investigating it and making an intentional decision. And here's the reason. If you're 58 now, and maybe everything's okay, and we decide, hey, we're not going to pursue this right now, we'll look at it again in a couple of years. Well, how many people between 58 and 60 add additional health issues? You know, maybe you're on medication at 60 that you weren't on at 58, and even if you still qualify for the coverage, it's more expensive. So I would just ask that you make an intentional decision about it. Do your investigation on it, and on any insurance, whether you have the financial need to have insurance in place. And if you do, the sooner you get it in place, the better, in terms of your health situation and in terms of just because of your age, and these premiums are also relative to age.
James got with the program. He texted us his question at 501-381-5228. You can do that too and have your question answered here on the Get Ready for the Future show. Just shoot us a text, 501-381-5228. And James' question is the question of the week this week. Congratulations today, James, and thanks for reaching out with your question. We would love to send you a lovely Get Ready for the Future show tumbler. We won't send you Janet's. It's used, and so we will actually pull a new one out of the box, send it over to you, James, and you can enjoy a tumbler because you got with the program and texted us at 381-5228, 501-381-5228 with your financial question, and you too could do that and be a winner on the Get Ready for the Future show. All right, our next question comes from Andrea in Malvern. Andrea writes, my spouse is risk averse and wants everything in CDs. I'm more comfortable with market risk. How do you find a retirement strategy we can both live with? Janet and I will make an observation here. It sounds like husband is way conservative. Wife is more aggressive. That's unusual. Most of the time,
often the other way around.
Most of the time, it's flipped.
Yeah.
But what do you say about how they should proceed to work out this imbalance?
Well, I would say that a good marriage is always about compromise, regardless of what the topic is. Maybe it's as simple as where are we going to eat dinner tonight, and maybe it's as complex as how are we going to handle our investments for retirement. But it is absolutely always about compromise. And Andrea, I love the way you phrased this. You said my spouse is risk averse, but I would challenge you to think about this a little bit differently. He's actually not risk averse. He is market risk averse, and he is choosing to accept inflation risk. Now, I guarantee you he doesn't think about it that way. He would think about it the way that you worded it, that he is just risk averse, period. But people don't recognize inflation risk as a risk, but it absolutely is. You know, when we were talking earlier in the show about the 3 big risks in retirement, inflation is one of them, and longevity. When you pool longevity with that, the longer you live in retirement, the more of a challenge inflation becomes. And so people accept inflation risk because it's the sneaky risk. It sneaks up on you. The market will slap you in the face, like you know this is coming. But the balance in retirement that you have to find is choosing when to accept risk, when to transfer risk, and how much to accept of any given risk. We would not encourage you to be all in air quotes here, the market. But we would also not encourage you to be all in on CDs. It's about balancing that and finding some compromise and a very logical way to approach this so you can set aside the emotions of investing.
Janet, I have to believe that I kind of know Andrea's husband because I've seen folks come in all the 30 years that I've been in the financial industry that really kind of have this attitude, and they have been influenced by some of the negative market noise out there. You know, when the market is choppy, then, you know, the people on TV are screaming at the TV about, you know, the Dow plunged today or whatever the noise is that day. Here's what you need to know. Here's the straight talk. Investing in great American companies has been the path for financial independence for millions and millions of Americans. Investing in stocks of well-managed, great companies that have profits, yes. Is there volatility? Yes, there is. Stocks are long-term investments, and that volatility tends to fade as the longer you hold an asset. That is the core principle of investing at GenWealth. We don't invest people's money that they're going to need anywhere in the next 10 years in anything that is equity-based. If we have equity-based investments, you can pretty well bet that those dollars are earmarked to be used 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 years down the road. Equity investments are long-term vehicles, and the long-term nature kind of waters down that volatility over time. At least history has shown that.
John, let's show a graphic for those who are joining us on YouTube, but they'll be able to see this for us. When we talk about the buckets and how we approach this, I think it's very helpful to have a visual. You know, earlier in the show, on another question, we talked about a potential need for an annuity. That would be in addition to what you're seeing here in the bucketing strategy. So the annuity or Social Security and pension would cover the required income need that you have. And then on top of that, segmenting these assets, I think you can see here a visual image of what compromise in investing looks like for Andrea and her husband, that there would be some here that would scratch the itch, so to speak, for Andrea in terms of exposure to, again, I'm going to air quote here, the market. We're not investing directly in like the S&P, but this is kind of what people are thinking about. They're thinking about growth-oriented investments. So that would handle what Andrea is wanting to do. And then the conservative element, those buckets of money are where you're going to pull your income for the first 5 to 10 years of retirement, and that money needs to be treated very conservatively. So if we have a downturn, when we have a downturn, you're not seeing your first money, the income that you're going to use in the first 10 years, you're not seeing that decrease in value. And then we're not getting to those growth buckets for 15 or 20 years. So if we have a downturn, we have time for that to turn around and go the other direction. John, I'll use 2008 as an example. If somebody was retiring going into 2008, they had no idea what was about to happen later that year and where the market was going to be. And the reality is, whenever you retire, you have no idea what's about to happen in the market. So we have to be in a position that regardless of what happens next, we have time and we're okay. We're going to have that income regardless. So in that bucket scenario, if you're starting your retirement in 2008 and then you fast forward, 10 years down the road, it's 2018, and then another 5 years, then we're at 2023. So think about, where we are right now. We're so far into this from the low point that would have scared everybody. It doesn't matter. Those buckets have had time to come back up in value before you start dipping into those. And John, frankly, the low point actually was in 2009. And so we're 16 years past that low point in March of 2009. So those buckets, again, they decreased and it would have looked ugly then, but they've had plenty of time to come back up. And Andrea, even just knowing the timing on using those might help your husband feel a little bit better about his market risk aversion.
Janet, I call this seeing the movie before you actually see it. We've seen the movie so many times.
Yeah.
We know what's going to happen. I tell our clients all the time, we don't know when the market's going to have volatility or have a problem or whatever. We just know it is. Mm-hmm. And we build your plan in anticipation of that. That is the essence of the ready to retire process, is building your plan in anticipation, because here's the fact. It is not a bear market that causes people to miss financial independence. It is selling something in a bear market that causes people to lose their financial independence.
Right.
It is having a need to liquidate something at an inopportune time. That's where a bear market really begins to bite you. It's all on paper unless you sell it. And so that's the key to what we do here at GenWealth, and helping people to navigate that. And you made my point that I was about to make, Janet, that bucketing image that we showed on our video feed just a minute ago. That's the answer to this dilemma between Andrea and her husband, because it clearly is one of those things that you've got to split the difference between the two. If they're hardcore, this is what I need to do.
And John, I would say coupling with that, if there's a need for any additional guaranteed income, people who are market risk averse, like in most cases, the security of a guaranteed income source. So that's also a possibility. Absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Amy from Maumelle is our next question. Amy writes, I am 50 and work in healthcare. My employer offers a pension, but I'm not sure how it fits with my other savings. Should I still contribute heavily to my 403B? Now, 403B may be a foreign acronym for a lot of folks, but that is a reference to the IRS code, much like 401k, but it is for a nonprofit organization. So obviously working in healthcare, nonprofit organization, 403B, 401k, sort of interchangeable for the most part.
Yeah, it is their version of a 401k. So it is the retirement plan that Amy has where she can contribute, but she also has a pension.
That's right. And Amy mentioned she's got the pension. Do you need to save aggressively? And I would say yes, because a pension is wholesalely different than a 401k or 403b.
It is. I'll use my mom's story on this. My mom was a teacher, and so when she retired, she had, my dad was still living at the time, so both of them had Social Security, and then they had mom's pension as well. Dad's passed away, so her monthly income is Social Security and pension. And mom and dad made wise decisions over the years. They never made a whole lot of money, but they made wise decisions with what they had. And so not in a situation where there's a lot of debt or anything like that. So her monthly pension and Social Security income is enough for day in, day out. She's fine. But if you live in Saline County, you might have foundation issues on a house, and that might be tens of thousands of dollars. And so when things like that happen, whether it's something like that or whether it is, just wanting to take a vacation, things that are in addition to your month in, month out expenses, that's when mom leans into the other assets that she has pooled over the years. And I think that's important for anybody who has a pension and Social Security. I think it's important for you to be able to provide yourself with flexibility. That's what this 403B money would ultimately provide, even if the pension and Social Security will cover what you have to have. What about the other things, even things like property taxes? If you just pay that once a year, it is supplemental to what you normally see in monthly expenses.
Janet, I think that if you really boil down the question is how much should she be contributing to the 403B in light of the fact that she has a pension, I think you need to contribute as much as you practically can to that 403B. But I also think that it would be in your best interest to sit down and take a look at your pension, your Social Security, and then say, okay, how much more guaranteed income do I need if I need any? And if you don't need any, then you can look at that 403B as inflation adjustments and discretionary income, things that you can go and have fun with in retirement, in addition to the money that you've got coming in every month just to pay your bills. I've never heard anyone, in all the time that we have been working in the industry together, Janet, I don't think either of us have come in and went, there was a client in today that said, I just saved too much for retirement. I don't know what to do.
I've never seen it. Not once.
I do have some folks that wonder how they're going to handle all their RMDs because the market has been really good and required minimum distributions. But I just don't know. There's lots of places that you can put money. So accumulating money is not a bad thing, especially if you don't have any debt or anything of that nature. But you really do need to have that flexibility that you talked about.
But Amy, I also think it's about balance even as you're accumulating. So, maybe you're not going to fully fund this because you're already, you are already also paying into your pension. Sometimes that's purely employer funded, but many times the employee is contributing towards that as well. So on top of that, the question is how much. And I think age 50 is a good point to be able to sit down with an advisor and walk through some math and put some numbers on paper on purpose to be able to plan a target, because really, even if you increase what you're contributing to your 403B, do you know what that's going to do for you? Let's walk through some numbers and do some projections and figure out a target to solve for. And that will give you the flexibility to go, yeah, we can take that vacation and still contribute and feel like we're on track, and then do check-ins on an ongoing basis.
Janet, I'm going to use that as a pivot point to talk a little bit about the financial planning process here at GenWealth. Whether you're 50 or you're 30 or you're 65, you need a plan. Clearly, you need, on paper, on purpose, a strategy that you're going to execute. And one of the things that I find just abhorrent about the industry that we work in is that there are a lot of firms that will not meet with someone unless they've got $250,000 or more. And at GenWealth, we've got a place for every investor. We have purposefully, ever since we've been in this business, we have purposefully made way for people that are trying to get started and trying to figure out what they need to do going forward. So whether you're in that situation, you're in the situation that Amy is in, or you're ready to retire, we've got a place for you.
Absolutely.
And you just heard the bell, and we're going to wrap things up with Janet's final thoughts. Janet?
Okay. I'll tell you, John, what is on my mind right now is the Business Owner Summit. I know we mentioned it earlier, but John, you and I, our business owners, we're 20 years into this thing with our business that we founded at GenWealth. We've been advising people longer than that, but the business itself is 20 years old, and I will say it has been one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. It has been one of the most challenging things, fulfilling and draining all at the same time. There have been many highs, and there have been some frustrating lows over time. We joke about, business would be easy if it wasn't for people, but I also think we wouldn't have the blessings that we have if it weren't for those same people. We have learned a ton, and so we're coming at this from the perspective of We are in your shoes. If you're a business owner, we have been there. We have walked that road ourselves personally, and then alongside many of our clients who have gone full circle and at this point liquidated their business and are moving into retirement as well. So if you're a business owner, we would love for you to join us on Saturday, October 4th from 9 to noon at the Delta Hotel. And all you need to do is go to getreadyforthefuture.com/endure to be able to register there.
Janet, we only have about 35 minutes on this show. We have other content that's on our radio hour, but we only have about 35 minutes. But if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, anytime you want, you can get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money and help you get toward financial independence. Just go search GenWealth Financial Advisors on YouTube. There is a plethora of information there free for the asking. All right, that is all the time we have for the Get Ready for the Future show for this week. For Janet Walker, I'm John Shrewsbury. We hope you have a great weekend and turn down the noise and listen to that straight talk and find financial independence for yourself. Take care.
Mics are out.
The GenWealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.